Jes, welcome to the Where the Climate Things Are podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is so fun. We were saying, we got connected via a couple sources, actually. And then we were like, let's have a call. And then we decided to just make this call a recording of a podcast. So everyone listening today is going to hear a lot of the questions that I would ask anyways. And I'm so excited to learn about your model and what you are doing and all that you're contributing to in terms of circularity, and really excited to dive in with you. So, but the first question I always ask folks, as I mentioned, I really like to focus on personal stories and your journey in both the outdoor recreation spaces and also kind of more environmentalism mindsets, is about introducing yourself. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself in whatever way you want to take that, that'd be great.
Great. So I'm Jes Parker. I am a story of reinvention in very many ways when it comes to Take2Trail. I spent the last 16 years supporting a husband with a very demanding career, and we live in coastal Connecticut. So it is the commuter life. I mean, my husband was gone 14 to 16 hours a day when my children are very, very small. And my kids are very close in age. So there was a lot of time where I was basically living in a pile of diapers. And aside from, the raising the kids and things, our family story is a little bit interesting in that my now 16-year-old was only diagnosed as autistic at 15. It's actually been just about a year to the day since that happened. And so things were very difficult. In my former life, I was in event planning and event design. The space that is now the warehouse for Take2Trail was an event design studio. At some point, pre-COVID, things just got too complicated with trying to manage a family and then also be at events, setting up events all weekend long. It's one thing when mom is solo parenting, and not to say that dads can't do it, but dads that are gone 16 hours a day, to strand them on a weekend with, 2 kids in diapers or not in diapers and special needs and things is kind of chaotic. So for me, I think the reason that this all kind of came together at the time that it did is because my son has been in a much better place for the last probably 10 months. And so my brain was finally available to do things that weren't focused just on the beings in my house. And because I was always a little bit of a tree hugger, this came together very naturally. It was a solve a problem type thing. And it was a stay in the community that I love so much, but I'm not that I'm aging out of it, but all of the athletes, the Ludos and things that are still going strong in their 50s.
Hell yeah.
I mean, listen, if I can, great, but I'm not going to bank on that. So this is a way that I get to stay immersed in the place that I love and be outside and be in cool destinations without necessarily needing to run, 100 miles at a time.
Totally. Oh, gosh, a lot of that really resonates. And I just wanted to say I'm really glad to hear that your child is doing better. And I think from the limited knowledge I have of this and that community, I think just sometimes the diagnosis or really helping to name something that's going on is also helpful in opening doors to get more help and to get more support and resources. So I'm really happy to hear that. And I know it sounds like a wild ride for many reasons in raising these children and also supporting your family, supporting your partner. And so heck yeah, I love that you're doing this. And I love that you're also finding that brain space and the creativity to make this happen. Before we go into this awesome model that you've developed, I am curious to dive into this tree hugger nature that you just said. So I always ask people too, the sort of opening question I ask in addition to an introduction is, what was your aha moment on climate or environment? And I'm curious for you, what was that moment in your life has it been your whole life that you've been kind of in that tree hugger mentality? What was your aha moment on environment?
In terms of aha moment as it relates to Take2Trail, that was definitely more in the last decade or so. But I like I grew up in a community in upstate New York where I feel like the recycling thing was very present very early on. I mean, I remember toting the crate of newspapers down to the bottom of the driveway when I was like 10 or maybe younger. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm 47. So that was like a really long time ago. That
Yeah.
was back in the 1900s.
Fair enough.
You know, like there's always been like some level of awareness, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that pertaining to Take2Trail, it was really like, I have a daughter also. And as she was growing up, there was, you know, there's Sheen or Shine. I don't even know how to say it because it's a brand that she is not allowed to buy.
Yeah. I always thought it was like Shane. Actually, I have no idea how to say it. We need to look this up. I don't even know either. Yeah. One of the three.
Is, right? Like I was, you know, aware during COVID, she would watch these videos of these kids, you know, teenagers, tweenagers buying these hauls of, I don't know, like 55 garments that they got for like $100 and they're like so proud of it. And I was like, that piece of garbage is going to last you one wear. You're going to throw it in the laundry machine. It's going to shrink up into nothing or just basically fall apart. And then what are you going to do with it? And you're just throwing it away. And like, none of that is made with natural materials. So it was, you know, it was experiences like that. It was generally being surrounded by a community that has had I don't know, it's probably been 8 years since my town has had a ban on plastic bags. It's probably been around a decade since I was like, we are not bringing plastic water bottles in this house. And I, you know, I think it was just like kind of a general awareness in the world that there was a big problem and that our behavior on a daily basis is probably the most effective path to changing future outcomes for the environment.
Yeah, which is a really hard thing to grapple with, I think, because there's kind of that personal scale and then the larger scale changes. And I think you're really hitting at both, which is super cool, at least in kind of an industry space. So you grew up in upstate New York, you said?
Yep.
I was curious about this because I'm from Maine and I have always felt like New England trails, and I'm going to put in upstate New York here too.
Yeah.
Like I think New England trails, we've kind of emailed about this as we were setting up this time. There's like, it's like choose your own adventure or sort of this, like, you never know what mixed bag you're going to get of like, is it wet leaves on top of slippery roots? Is it the White Mountains that are like unrunnable? You're basically like hiking up, you know, like what are they called? Chimney, you know, the chimney trail or whatever, which is essentially like rock climbing, whatever, fill in the blank. Like, how did your love of running come into being? Was it fostered in New York, or like, how did you start running? And then also I'm always curious how, especially like New England, at least East Coasters, got into trail running, because like mine was sort of the classic, like Red Born to Run, found there was a trail behind my house in Maine. What's that? Oh, let me go like run it. Usually I would hike it or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, but just like, how did trail running come into your life?
My running story is a little different than my basic, you know, connection to nature story. You know, I grew up skiing a ton. My father was an avid skier and to this day at 79 still is. And so we did a lot of traveling to mountain towns. And so I was always kind of exposed to it. I went to sleepaway camp in the Adirondacks. And so, you know, while there was technically like a cabin surrounding you for like 8 hours at night, you're largely outside all day.
Yeah.
You know, we used to swim on the beaches of Lake George. And so, you know, that was my general nature. But then the running really kind of came into play in my 20s when I lived in Manhattan. I would run just for exercise. You know, like when you're in Manhattan, it's so hard to feel like you're ever outside because even when you step out of the building, you're like surrounded by more concrete, right? And like when you go to Central Park, unless you're there at hours where you might get mugged, you are also just constantly surrounded by people and noise and things like that. So, you know, I started running on the West Side Highway and along the FDR Drive, which was always interesting because I've always been a morning person, and the running by the homeless in Camp encampments was always a little scary. And that was before I knew anything about hydration. So like I wasn't carrying a pack. I had nothing safety wise with me. I'm not even sure I carried a cell phone back then, because that was when like they didn't work that well. I mean, it was more than 20 years ago at this point, which is terrifying. And then
it's okay. This is a safe space to share, you know, but I totally hear you. Yeah.
The running thing really, really took off for me in my mid 30s after I had my kids, because of my husband's work schedule. A quick run out the door when he was home was one of the things that was easily available to me. And we lived in a cute little beach town, a little further towards the city from where we are now in Westport. And then I joined a CrossFit because they had a 5 a.m. class. And CrossFit led to a group of people that were doing a Spartan race at City Field. And the Spartan race at City Field was a lot of fun. And that happened to be the only year that Spartan ever put on like a true outdoor trail race in Connecticut. And just because like I had so much fun at the first one, I signed up for the next distance, which was a sprint. And I did that. And that was a great time. So then I was like, well, what else can we do? And so I actually got into trail running really through Spartan Race. I did all of their distances until I maxed them out at the Ultra Beast. And the first one I did was the first one they ever put on in New Jersey. It was on a mountain called Mountain Creek, AKA the home of Action Park, which anyone that grew up in the Northeast probably has heard of, because it is the land of very many accidents. And there's actually an amazing documentary out there about the history of Action Park, which is amazing. And my dad used to take us there. So I ran up and down that mountain for 32 miles while jumping over things, carrying things, you know, fire, barbed wire, all of that stuff. And it took me about 12 hours, and I finished that race and I was like, that was a lot of fun, which is a very different experience actually than the first race I did on there. That was only a super distance at 8 miles. After that 8-mile race, I was like, never again. And I think really the difference was training, because when I signed up for the ultra, I was so scared of what I had gotten myself into. I hired a coach for the first time.
There you go.
And as I spent time running Spartan Ultras, Tough Mudder changed one of their offerings into this thing. They had Toughest Mudder, which was America's Toughest Mudder. And it started as an 8-hour event that started at midnight. It grew into a 12-hour event that was an 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And that was where I found my first like legitimate success as a runner. I actually podiumed in, you know, in an elite field at 40 years old in a race where my goal had simply been to run 40 miles because I was 40. And at that point in time, the longest I had ever run, I think was like 35 miles in a 8-hour toughest the year before.
And is the 8-hour race, like these races are kind of not backyard, but they're looped courses, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I love hearing about people that come from the Spartan and Tough Mudder world, because I do think it's so cool what those brands have done for getting more people into trail, because like a lot of their stuff is on, if it's not like a trail race, and I'm not as familiar with like all the different lengths and all the different, is it on trail? Is it not? I know they do like some at like stadiums, you know, but I feel like a lot of their stuff is really geared towards these sort of like outdoor mountain athletes, and all the obstacles that are available are sort of like a little more in that vein. Especially, I mean, we joked, this is like, I just went to Tarawera a couple weeks ago in New Zealand, and the joke amongst the even elite athletes was, oh, that was the hardest Tough Mudder I've ever done. The mud was like,
I heard wild. It was
and so
very muddy.
Yeah. So the idea of that crossover is really interesting. And I'm curious how, like, again, this might be another aha moment, but like, let's go now into the origin of Take2Trail. And like, you're running for many years. You've obviously been in the like ultra or trail community broadly for many years. And as we know, as we were talking about before we hit record, there is a gear. Well, in general, I think in outdoor spaces, there's like a gear issue, or you need certain gear. So there's a couple of things here, which I'm so excited to get into with you. It's like the circularity aspect and sort of the sustainability theme of like gear consumption. But then there's an access piece, right? Of like, I feel like everyone's always like, oh, trail running is the easiest thing to get into because all you need is a pair of shoes. Well, first of all,
you need $400 actually.
Exactly. So first of all, those shoes could be close to $400 these days, depending on what shoes you're buying, but I digress. The other piece is that also like you're increasingly needing maybe a vest or a way to carry things, safety items, cell phones, that what you were mentioning that you maybe didn't have on some of those runs, which same. I've done a lot of those runs, same, like at night or in the early morning through cities. And I'm like, what was I thinking? Yeah, so same. Gear or a vest, race entries are really expensive anyways. And so I think what I'm so fascinated to talk to you about Take2Trail and what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about kind of like the origin story here, how you got into this, and then like what the business model is or what your model is and what you're trying to do with Take2Trail and kind of like open it up for us. Yeah.
So I was packing for Javelina last year where my heat training definitely failed me and I had a temper tantrum and I DNF'd, and I'm totally okay with that because I'm signed up to go back this year.
Hell yeah. I love this intro. This is so good. Okay, great.
So I was packing and I think my last obstacle course race was in 2022. So for like 3 years, I'd been kind of shuffling through these piles of gear before I went to races. And when I was packing for Javelina, it was like the time where I looked at what I had. And with obstacle course racing, you really need a headlamp. Waist lamps are not an option, and chest lamps, nothing except for an actual headlamp that is on your head and then secured with paracord to your bib or your clothing in some way. So when you're jumping off these massive obstacles into the water, you don't lose your headlamp. But they always give me like a horrible headache. So I had amassed like a couple of other options. I was like, I literally am not using this Black Diamond Storm ever again. I never maybe for a dog walk, but I don't need 7 of them to walk my dog.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So is the gear similar to, like, give us a little bit of background. Is the gear between these two races, like what you would wear to a Tough Mudder, is that similar to what you'd wear to Javelina?
For a regular Tough Mudder, yes. Yeah. For a world's toughest Mudder or a toughest, no. Once you get into dealing with the night, because you're wet every minute, we're in wetsuits or frog togs or like, I have like frog skin tops that, like, because they're at the time, I don't know if they are now, they weren't even made with a zipper. So you would buy like a frog skin top, you would bring it to someone to put a zipper in it so you could get in and out of it easily. For Worlds, pretty much everyone is in a full wetsuit every time. And because you still need to use the bathroom, although all of that water is probably 60% urine, it's disgusting. Like a front zip wetsuit is not a common item.
No.
So there's a lot of gear modification. And so it's funny because when I started this business, being that a large portion of my running community is still involved in OCR, I was like, I'm not buying your wetsuits because I know what is on them. I know what is in them. I don't want anything to do with them.
That's disgusting. So fascinating. Yeah, you like know that angle and you're like, no, don't try to sell me this gear. Okay, so anyways, I diverted us. So you were having
is the same. We all wear packs. I mean, I'm sure belts have really risen in popularity in the last 3 or 4 years since I've been out of that world. I don't know if people are wearing them. I would suspect less than in general running sport, because to have anything at your waist is annoying when you're going over a wall. Like a lot, there are people that like parkour style them. I was never one of them, but there are a lot of obstacles where you're kind of throwing yourself over things.
You're like,
right. So and that's why like a chest lamp or a waist lamp was never an option.
It's gonna get caught.
But we're wearing packs. We're wearing the same garments. I mean, universally running, and this is something that's actually, I was like, I'm hyper trail focused with this business because I do think that there is value in having a niche place where people know they can go to get trail running gear. And it's not like going on like Gear Trade or some of the bigger, resale platforms where you have to like know what you're looking for to even bother to go there, versus if you go to Take2Trail, you're like, I need trail running shoes, I need trail running clothing. But like when it comes to like a pair of leggings, I mean, the same, I say 2XU, but I believe it is really 2XU leggings are worn from road to obstacle course racing to regular trail running.
Yeah.
So I was packing for this race. I'm like, there's all this OCR stuff or stuff that I don't need anymore because I don't do OCR. And at the same time, one of my very best running friends was having difficulty returning something that she worked really hard to get. She had bought a hydration belt that was sold out everywhere online. She like finally found a running store in Texas that had it. She ordered it. She hated it. But then she lost the top to one of the bottles. And so the combination of that and there not being like super welcoming with the return, like I was like, well, I can solve that problem for you because I've been thinking about doing this thing. And I thought about first putting Take2Trail together as something that lived on Facebook Marketplace. But I was like, wait, I hate Facebook Marketplace. I've used it for a million things. And then I've had some really, really sketchy experiences with it.
Sure. Yeah.
And all of the peer-to-peer platforms have a lot of risk involved for both the buyer and the seller. And I wanted to create a place where all of that risk kind of goes away. So I may not pay you as much if you're selling me something as you would have gotten if you tried to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, but you don't have to answer 47 emails that say interested or are trying to negotiate with you or are otherwise just kind of taking up your time. Because, right, you then respond like someone says just interested and you're like, do you want to make a time to meet up? Like, can we use a full sentence here? And so you're trying to read through all that stuff. So I pay a little bit less because it takes a whole lot less energy. And then buying on Facebook Marketplace, like I've arranged to pick something up from someone and had them not show up. I've arranged to pick something up and found it to be much dirtier than pictured, or undisclosed animal contact or things like that, where like you're like, great, I just put all this time and energy into this thing and it's not what I expected it to be. I mean, in the earliest days of Take2Trail, when I was trying to amass my opening inventory, I was really scouring a lot of the peer-to-peer marketplaces and then making my pitch as to why I didn't want to pay them as much as they thought they deserved to be paid. And in some cases it worked. And in some cases I got totally hosed. I bought a pair of Hokas online that from Poshmark that like literally had no tread left on half of one shoe. And I was like, how did you not take a picture of that? And the answer was because they were like a scuzz bucket that just wanted to make $20 on their shoe, you know? And so it really, my experiences on these peer-to-peer sites really solidified the things to me that outside of the environmental aspect and the accessibility aspect are really important. So I am not afraid to admit I have a great deal of privilege. It has allowed me to start this business. It has allowed me to access and play with a whole lot of gear. And it has led to my having very high standards. So when someone is buying something that is gently used from Take2Trail, it is really gently used. I'm not selling you a pair of shoes that I don't believe
with
has
no tread.
Right. Like, it's just like I inspect before I buy a shoe from someone. Before they even send it to me, I make you send me pictures of, you know, lateral views, medial views, heel view, top view, sole view. So I can look, I zoom in and I look and see how much compression is there on the outsole. Right. Yeah. And because I've dealt in a lot of shoes at this point, I kind of know how they age. So like I can look at a shoe and go, this shoe might only have 100 miles left on it. And like, I'm not interested in trying to sell someone a shoe that only has 100 miles left in it. Not because those last 100 miles don't deserve to be run, but because I want to be able to be super transparent and confident in what I'm selling people, that it is going to do the job it is supposed to do. Because it also, it doesn't make Hoka look good if someone thinks they're buying a gently used Hoka and they, you know, the person is like shin splint city in 5 runs because the shoe was really pretty shot. So I'm very closely inspecting everything. I'm making the process to either buy or sell for me as painless as it could possibly be and less expensive.
Talk about the process then, because I think that this is another thing with selling that when I mentioned your model, because Claire Gallagher, by the way, shout out Claire Gallagher, she was the one who actually sent me and my friend Faith like a, hey, by the way, you know, you need to check out Take2Trail. Like what she's doing is awesome. You know, go check it out. And we were both like, this is so cool. You know, I'm like really excited about it. And then I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but someone said, well, my problem is always like shipping to sell, or like the shipping part is tough. Like talk a little bit about like buying and selling on the platform.
So if someone is going to submit their gear to me, and just because we are right in the day we are at March 6th, I think the website is about to have a complete reboot in what it looks like from today to the end of next week. I'm on the cusp of changing it from more of a what is Take2Trail to like this is the store and the place where you buy and sell. So it's going to look a little bit different, but there will always be a sell to us or submit your items button on the website. And from there, you fill in your, personal information. Like I need your return address in order to create a label to send to you. I need to know whether you want me to pay you by Venmo or Zelle, and what your ID is for all of those things. And then for each item that you want to sell me, you can submit like there's, click boxes. So I want to sell you a hydration pack. And if you click hydration pack, or if you click actually, I think it says hydration solutions, there's a drop down. Are you selling me a hydration pack? Are you selling me a flask or reservoir? Are you selling me a belt? So like it literally like gets pretty granular. And then it asks you, the name and model if you have it. And if it's a shoe, it asks you how many miles if you know. And then it guides you for each product type, specifically what pictures to send me. So if someone is selling me a headlamp, it's going to ask you to send a picture of like the front and back of the actual headlamp, but also the battery compartment and or the charge port, because I need to know before I'm paying you that this is actually still a useful item. And so then once you submit all of your items and you've sent all the pictures, so I literally tell people like, bring your phone into your garage, because you can do it all from standing over your gear stash and not have to like bring anything anywhere. It's super easy. My goal is within 36 hours to send people an offer on their items. I send offers in I give them two numbers basically. One is with a prepaid shipping label, so that you just literally print out the label, shove it in. One of the questions I actually ask is, do you have packaging materials to send it? And if yes, is it a box or a soft mailer? Because that influences the label that I send. So you get your label, you toss it in whatever that thing was that you said you had, and you send it to me. Once you have sent it to me, I then open it and inspect it. I very cautiously first smell it. Then I look at every single like connection point, zipper, with vests. Like I'm sitting next to a Solomon vest. So like I would I pull every little thing that's supposed to be elastic and make sure that it is still elastic. Do the zippers function smoothly? Like I go through every single compartment. I stick my hand through the mesh to make sure that it is fully intact. And if it's not intact, but the vest is still perfectly good, that's fine. I will just take a close-up picture on the listing for that product and show you the little tiny hole that is in the back elastic, because someone jabbed it with their pole when they were sticking it in mid-run, right? It doesn't change the functionality of the vest, but you should know, which is the kind of thing that people hide from you on Poshmark and eBay and Facebook Marketplace. And then once it's inspected, as long as everything is as agreed, and it doesn't look like you decided to take it to a Tough Mudder after you sent me the pictures, I will pay you by Venmo or Zelle. And that's all there is to it. It's very, very easy. As far as the second offer, I do a self-ship option. Some people, because, they have long-standing company relationships with UPS or FedEx, like they may get, more preferential rates, or they may think that they, can do it for, less than the difference between the prepay and self-ship item. And so they choose that, and that's fine. It's actually been about 50-50 thus far if people are choosing the prepaid option or the self-ship.
Interesting.
So that is one of the channels through which I'm acquiring my inventory. The other channels that I get inventory is I go to races, and this is like a value add for a race director. So I show up at your race, and I bring with me my boxes to recycle end of life, or footwear that I can't, sneakers that I can't take because they are too worn. I have channels by which I can actually still get them on feet. I'm just not selling them. And then, to have them recycled, like that's what that goes into like dog bedding and furniture stuffing. Like it's just, basically downcycled items.
Right.
And then I buy a lot of stuff from liquidators. Like I am constantly scouring business to business sites. So like a running store that went out of business, or just shelf pulls from like a Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that, that are items that the new model of the thing came out. They had 7 of the old ones sitting there, and they either need to sell it or it goes in a landfill. So I buy it. And sometimes it's from a liquidator, sometimes it's directly from a business. I actually have one local running store to me that, unfortunately, this year they stopped selling trail shoes, but they literally handed me their inventory of returned shoes, shoes that people purchased and didn't work out for them. And like they didn't have the box, and they couldn't resell them. So what were they going to do with them?
Yeah. Wow.
And there's this huge misconception that when you donate shoes, they go on feet. That is absolutely not the case. And with trail shoes, probably more so than with like a daily wear sneaker. I know in communities that are very outdoor centric, like I've heard Truckee and Flagstaff and Boulder all have like amazing Goodwill type stores and thrift shops or whatever. The majority of the country does not. And no one is actually going to them looking specifically for a trail running shoe. So that shoe sits on the shelf at Goodwill for eons until probably the materials are breaking down. And eventually they get shipped offshore. And when they are shipped offshore in bales, they often end up in third world countries that do not have the infrastructure to then get those items on feet. And they rot on their shorelines. And basically we've just taken this very American first world problem and turned it into an already struggling nation's problem. So by keeping things in circulation until they really are recyclable, we reduce their environmental impact on the production and the disposal end, and then they become the stuffing in your car's seat. And so like, it's kind of a win-win-win-win-win,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Getting into like the store side of things, my goal is to try and make trail running as accessible as possible.
Nice.
I would say if you went into your local running store and you wanted to buy a pair of trail running shoes, a pair of like socks that were, like a wicking sock or a wool sock, and, a pair of shorts and a pack and a windbreaker and a headlamp, like you're not out the door for under $400 or $500.
No, exactly.
I think you could probably, and I haven't actually put together like my best priced outfit, which would be a fun social media experiment to do. But like, I think you could probably get dressed and out the door for closer to $150 with Take2Trail, because my goals, while I need to make enough money to support the business and like be able to like have the items nicely photographed to take the ick factor out of buying secondhand, which is also another part of like Take2Trail trying to change consumer ideas and behavior a little bit. I need to cover my costs. I don't need to make a ton of money. This is about something that is like much bigger than Jes Parker sitting in my house in Westport. This is about like getting people outdoors, getting products used until their end of life, minimizing the amount of really toxic things that come out of our clothing in landfills and leach into the soil. And then like, I mean, if you think about where things end up and then the overall impact on our food supply, our water supply, like it's no wonder that, there's some studies out there that talk about like the amount of antibiotics that are in basically all of us and all of our food at this point because of disposal. Right. And like, so it's not just antibiotics, brother. It's like, it's all of the chemicals and microplastics and hormone disruptors that are in all of our synthetic gear, because most of the gear that we love most is petroleum or plastic when all is said and done. It's just spun into something that feels soft and cozy.
Yeah. And I mean, the environment, I think it's like the most impactful environmental sector on environment. And I think maybe agriculture's up there, but is fashion or, gear falls under that, clothing, and it's wild. I mean, it's like when you start to dive into that, it's debilitating to see how big this problem is. And of course we have go ahead.
I'm going to say my understanding is that the garment and fashion industry on a whole scale is a larger contributor to global emissions than all of air and freight.
Yeah.
Like travel. That's insane.
Yeah, travel. Yeah. It's wild. And it's like also what everything you were just saying too, of like the pollutants and the dyes and all these pieces that get into waterways and water usage to create shirts and pants and all this stuff. It's just wild to get into that. Okay, wait. So this is awesome to hear about. And I think everything you're doing is so important. So we talked a little bit about like reducing the ick factor. You mentioned this, and also like, thank you for doing the hard work of opening a package and being like, okay, I have to inspect this now. I'm curious. It sounds like you retake the photos. So you do all the photos on your end, even though people send you photos of the gear, but then you maybe accept it, see the gear, and then retake the photos. Do you also like, what's the sort of like washing or prepping protocol on your side?
There's a lot of it.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of what I was wondering. It's a lot of work.
My process on shoes in particular is, when I get a shoe, I authenticate it, because the number of fake trail running shoes on the market is astounding.
Interesting.
Particularly Salomon and Hoka's. I have actually come across fakes, and like, I don't want to be responsible. Like, someone thinks they're buying like this, super techy foam, but they're buying something from, some like half-rate factory that some small child made. Like, I don't want anything to do with that.
So I just walked through my first shoe store in Vietnam. I was just in Vietnam, and I like walked through the markets in Hanoi, and you're like, oh, a New Balance shoe. Super cool. Like, this is a really nice shoe. And then you're like, oh, wait, this is not real. But it looks real. How do you... Real. Yeah. How do you find that out?
Certain things like there's actually an app called Check, and I started with using them, but as I've been around doing this a little bit longer, there are some kind of telltale signs. Hoka actually happens to use a particular insole, so most of the time I can catch it on, like, I pull out the insole and I can tell from the bottom of the insole if it's what they use. But also things like when there's layered foam in an outsole, if there's a paint line, it's not layered foam. It's colored.
It's painted.
And then the thickness of the plasticky material that like logos are laid on with, you can tell there a lot. Also towards the top of a shoe, where the shoelaces come out at the top.
Yes.
Down that front little line where you would lace between, that's a pretty telltale area, because in a super cheap production, those are not finished edges. So all you have to do is actually look.
That's the one where I saw it the most in looking at those shoes. I was like, oh, the seams, like if you flip over the tongue, or like more under, like where the laces go in. That's exactly what I noticed too.
So okay. That's the authentication piece. Shoes, first I dry brush them to get off like any little stuff that I can. Then they go for a soak in OxiClean Odor Buster, because thanks, they're shoes. So they take an overnight bath, or whatever is really necessary. I try not to overcoat things, because exposure does influence the materials a little bit. And then they get another brushing with a specialized shoe cleaning solution that is meant to take out like sweat and dirt and whatever. And then they go for one more basically rinse cycle before they are air dried, photographed, and made to look not icky, because no one wants icky shoes. Some stuff is just like laundry, but like I really pay close attention. There are kinds of stains and pulls and whatever that no one's going to care if they buy. And like I said, I will highlight it. Anything that has any damage, you will see a picture of that damage as well as a written description of it on the product listing. If there's a thread pull 3 inches above the hem of a shirt, that's not going to prevent most people from buying, a $70 shirt for $20. But if it's like, like it looks like you're going to have a third nipple, I'll still maybe list it and tell you where it is. But like, you're not going to just get it and be like, oh, I now look like I have extra nipples. Great.
Right. And I didn't know that. Yeah. Exactly. Well, this is great. Cause I actually have a Solomon vest that I've never worn cause it's too small, but it got like a little, sun damage, but it's never been used. But it's one of those things where I'm like, and I mean, it's an extra small, so it's hard to sell because it's like a very specific size and it was too small for me. So I'm sort of I've like held onto it for years and I might just try to sell it on your platform.
Like that the other day.
Yeah, there you go. And it's just,
it looked like a bleach spot on the back, like on the back of a pack.
Yep.
I mean, it made someone get into an Osprey Duro pack for like $30.
Yeah, exactly.
And $80.
Yeah. Exactly. So this actually lends to my next question really well. How do you price things, or do people price them? Like, how does pricing work on your platform?
I price them. So this is one of the areas where Take2Trail is different from a peer-to-peer marketplace. When I buy that item from you, I've taken over all of the risk involved in selling that item. It's not consignment. It is not a you get to set the price type deal, because you wouldn't get that money back anyways. I've already paid you for the item.
Right.
I set my pricing based on a number of factors. First is, what did the item cost when it came onto the market? So if it's a shoe that's like several years old but is new in box, like I can still find what that item cost in the first place. Then I look at what is it selling for on secondary markets. So I look at the eBays, the Poshmarks, the Facebook marketplaces, and then I also take into consideration when looking at those numbers that they're probably lying about the condition. So I'm probably going to be able to get the same, if not more, although very often I still price below those numbers because I want people knowing with confidence that they're getting the best deal possible for that item.
Yeah, totally.
My payouts to people that are submitting their items are based upon what I believe I can sell the item for. So a watch, I'm probably going to pay you 50 to 60% of what I'm going to sell it for. So like in most cases, that's still going to be, I think I have Garmin Phoenix 6s listed on the site right now for like $215 or so, which is like a pretty good deal. So
great deal.
People got $100 for that watch that they, like they got the 8 when it came out. And so they were just sitting on that watch. And so the $100 is better than the $0.
Right. Definitely.
And so it's always a little bit of, of a supply and demand thing. Like right now, I do not have a single pair of poles in my inventory, and I'm kind of excited to get some. So like if people are selling me poles, the first couple of pairs of poles, especially if they're nice flakies, like they're going to get paid because I want to have those items just to be able to complete someone's kit on the website.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And my goal for a gently used shoe is to sell it at 50 to 60% off its original price. For a brand new with tag item, I will probably sell it for somewhere like 20 to 40% off. And then there's that hinter region where like I know something is actually new, like I can tell it's new, but it doesn't have the tag. There's no like, proof of when the person purchased it. Maybe like they wore it one time, it didn't work, they washed it carefully. That item you'll probably be able to get for, 30 to 50% off from Take2Trail.
Got it. Wow. It's a lot to factor in of like what you're paying the person that sold it, then what you're putting it online for, what it's going for, what the discounted, use factor is. So it's super interesting. I think to me, what's so interesting about, like, again, at first when I heard about this, I was like, oh, it's brilliant from like a circular economy, like keep things in use and go till the end of their life and, have many miles run on these shoes. And now I'm realizing it's such an amazing accessibility play here too, of like, there's so many increasing barriers to getting into these sports, and not just trail running, but like, obviously we're focusing on trail running here. But as you said, you're going with a kit. If you're like walking out with a kit that's new, or even, if it's, I don't know, like depending on where you're buying it from, it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And to me, a lot of I was saying this, I think I was saying this before we started recording, but like the fact that like my partner we get sent shoes all the time. It's a great problem to have. It's not even a problem. It's like a very big privilege. And there's a lot of times where it's not the right fit or it's not the right feel, which is again, like very privileged to be able to be like, oh, that doesn't like feel as good as my other shoes. Right. But like to be able, I feel like there's a lot of folks who are not elite athletes that get sort of sent these pieces of gear or, you know, whatever, it's like a comped, whatever it is. And I think that, you know, that often like a lot of that stuff either sits there or gets donated, or, you know, we mentioned sometimes you try to sell it on Facebook Marketplace, but then there's sort of the like, you know, what's really funny? I don't know if this is like an interesting anecdote, but Ryan can sell shoes super easily. I have yet to sell a pair where we're using the same account. Like it's all in his account. And maybe it's like something about that. He's like, I don't know, like guys are like, I want that Hoka right now. Like the Hoka, like the requests are like many, like dozens of people are like going after the same shoe, and it's all dudes. I can't sell a shoe to save my life on there. And I'm like, well, maybe there's
That's
like
really funny.
an audience. Yeah.
I have sold definitely, I hadn't thought about this. I have definitely sold more used men's shoes than women.
This was my next question. This is where I was going with this. So
and
that's
I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, literally 3 pairs this week were men's.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And I had also noticed I have more used women's shoes, but I think that's because there's one woman that runs local trail races that I go to, and I think she is just like a total gear nut. And so I think she tries on a lot of shoes, but she has the tiniest feet. So like women, if you need size 6 shoes,
you've got
you covered.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But so do you feel like it sounds like from the demand perspective it's maybe skews more male, but do you have a supply, like are there like things you're noticing even like right now as we're talking about this where you have more inventory of men's stuff, or like who's selling on your site so far, I guess is kind of another question to ask.
Who is selling me stuff? More female on the pro athlete side, more male on the general human that found me through some other channel side.
Okay.
And so that's like where it's coming from. In terms of where it's going to, it's actually been pretty spread. I have noticed the one thing I wasn't certain I was going to sell was watches, and watches are selling like hotcakes.
Wow. Okay.
And literally watches, I was like looking behind my computer because I have one.
Oh, you probably have them all over.
Without a charger and without a band, because with the Garmin Quick Fit bands, I think, rumors that I'm hearing is it's funny because I've been a Garmin Phoenix wearer since like the 3. And I've never had a complaint about the bands, but a lot of people hate the bands that Garmin makes. Okay. So they buy like replacement bands on Amazon anyways. So to them, they don't care that those pieces are missing. And I think most, I know I have probably 10 chargers because I have one in my car for my watch. I have one in my nightstand. I have one in my bathroom. I have one in my kitchen.
And they're so specific. You can't use other chargers on those. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So like, I think, most people, if they're looking at a Garmin Phoenix and it's not their first one, they already have the chargers and stuff. And the reality is for what I'm selling these watches for, to buy a replacement charger and band online is also so much less than buying a Phoenix 6 in the box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, I think so. I'm also realizing like somehow we are almost at an hour of recording, which is hilarious. I want to talk to you so much more, which we can do, but I also, one sort of last question about Take2Trail, and then a wrap up question that I ask everybody, and that's kind of then we'll close it out. But I'm curious, you're maybe a year or 10 months in, or how many months? You're not very far into this, but
the actual store has only been open since January 30th. So I don't know, we're 38 days in or something.
I was okay. Interesting. I was taking a completely different timeline that you mentioned earlier in the show. So you're very new and like, this is already, you have customers on both sides, like the sellers and buyers. That's amazing. So this is a very, at least as of now, it seems quite high touch and like curated by you. Curated is the wrong word, but like vetted by you. Like you are the quality control. You are, again, doing the Lord's work of opening packages and smelling them and all these things. In terms of scale, and this might not even be, you might be like, I'm not even wanting to scale past what I'm doing, but like,
I do.
how do you?
idea.
Yeah. What are your ideas here? Yeah.
I mean,
curious.
so in terms of it being high touch, I am actually actively trying to automate. I have an app in development to help me manage the item submission process so that it does a lot more of the research and math for me. And it's interesting because I was listening to your pod with Molly Seidel and she was talking about AI, and it's been a really sensitive subject for me because I know that it's an issue, but I also know, unfortunately, that to compete as a small business, if you don't use it, you can't. Like, I wish that I could produce the ads and content that social media and like literally Meta demands, because you know what you feed them determines what they feed users, and like I can't get away from it. I have tried very hard to make sure that I use less of it for image generation, knowing that that is a more resource intense process for AI than something like having a bot scrape websites to try and find how much, you know, a speed goat sold for when it was a brand before. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
And so I am hoping to be able to take Take2Trail to really big places, to include other trail sports. To me, the natural growth curve is to start including mountain biking, camping, like hiking, camping, backpacking. And then my husband actually loves to overland because his body will not allow him to explore as many places on his feet. And so this is a way that he can connect to nature. And so like, when we get to those things and big equipment, we might get into a little bit more of a consignment model on those things. But the quality control is so incredibly important to me that like, I'm going to be dealing with like local inspectors to check out your thing if I'm going to do that, because I'm not going to have you ship your canoe from Tahoe to me to just send it back to Tahoe. Right. Like I'm going to, you know, so there will always be a circle of trusted individuals that are involved in it. But there's also applications to go Take2 road, Take2 swimming. I think one of the biggest places that this could go and make a serious impact is in youth sports. So as a mother of two children, thankfully one of them chose gymnastics, and is now turning into dive. And so like, I mean, she needs one expensive leotard a season. It's great. But hockey, lacrosse, football, the amount of gear that parents are buying for children that quit the sport after one season, their feet grew 3 times during the season. And so like 3 pairs of cleats to get through 3 months that like, they don't even smell yet. And so, you know, like finding a way to kind of take this into other corners is definitely on my to-do list, on my dreaming big list. Probably the more I talk about it, the less likely it's going to be that I get to do it.
Well,
because, you know, years.
Ideas are going to,
Right. But I think, you know, like the trail world in and of itself could use something like a Amazon for used and overstocked goods that just need to find a home because they're perfectly good.
Right. Exactly. Well, and that's exactly, it sounds like what you're providing and getting to that scale. I was just going to say, as a hockey player growing up who bought my pads from Play It Again Sports, AKA they were used and they smelled, I can still smell the smell of my gloves. And the big ones were my gloves and my shoulder pads, for some reason, smelled so bad. I finally convinced my parents after a few seasons of playing, because I was a dedicated player for many seasons, but it was like Play It Again Sports. That was the model. They were, you know, everything in there was used, and it was great because it was like hockey gear can be really expensive. But yeah, to your point, like the expense, the cost of getting children or, you know, like youth players to play different seasons when they grow and stuff like that. So I think this is all like, there's so much potential here. And I think what's really cool is starting to get the word, hopefully, using this to like help you get the word out, especially in the trail community, around also like, it's not gross to buy these shoes because like, here's the amazing process that you put them through.
I promise you, anything I'm selling, I would put on my own bougie body. Like I am very connected.
That's a good way to put it.
I always say like, I'm glitter and dirt. I actually love fashion, like real hardcore fashion. And, you know, all of that. I used to be in the event world in New York City, like the days of bottle service, you know, and Lotus and like serious stuff. And I
Yeah.
have, a firm appreciation for all of that. But then I literally spent a decade rolling in the mud and other people's
literally.
So,
exactly.
right. So like I'm a little bit of both, but
Yeah.
I think that gives me a really unique perspective because I know the things that have prevented me in the past from buying things secondhand and that would, and that, my standard is very high and people can come to me with high standards and expect to know what they're getting and actually have that be the thing that they receive in the mail.
Totally. I think it's great to hear. And it's also, I mean, I was just thinking too, the last piece like that you mentioned of being at this, I mean, we could have a whole other podcast on what you just talked about with like use AI as a small bit. If you don't use it, if you're sort of like, do you get left behind? And I think like what you just said though made so much sense around automating some of your workflows of being able to figure out like who sold what, when, for what price, and kind of like doing that math for you is really fascinating. And Molly bringing that up, I was really appreciative of her because I think it's a huge topic. And it's also one that, it's like, I feel like a lot of businesses are at least to kind of even stay relevant, not even get ahead. It's like the workflow automation piece is really interesting. So, but lastly, the fact that you're doing so much so hands-on at this stage really to me gives me as a potential buyer, maybe I'm not necessarily a buyer, it could be a seller. And I know like that confidence I have now of being like, it's not just, these sort of pieces that are going out into the ether and, I get a couple bucks back. It's like a real quality control.
Yeah.
Okay. My goodness. In an effort to keep us within a decently sized podcast, I would like to ask you my last question, which is it definitely will take us maybe in a different direction on purpose. But the question I like to wrap these with, as you might have heard, if you've listened to these, is what is your favorite climate solution that is not your own? And I think actually this is how Molly brought up AI, because it was more about like fighting against like data center inefficiencies and water and energy usage. But what, like, so circularity aside, or, kind of reuse models aside, I'm curious, like as a tree hugger, what are other environmental solutions that are making you really excited right now?
So one of the things that I think was most impactful in my household and that people can do is to mind your containers. And I know that sounds really weird, but like I used to eat yogurt out of those single serve containers all the time. And then like one day I was like, but wait, they sell this in a 5 serving container. And so that is one of those very, very easy things that everyone can do that make a difference. And it's interesting because Molly also said this, and I was like, well, she stole my philosophy, because my philosophy is we should all just do what we can, where we can. And that changes with our life stages. It changes with our financial circumstances. And so it's always just about identifying the little tiny things you can do that add up to making a bigger difference. So it is like, I don't buy plastic soda bottles pretty much ever. Certainly not to bring into my house. Like I drink Sprite Zero like it's my actual job. But a can is much more recyclable. And, if it ends up strewn on the side of the road because it's windy on recycling day, it actually will break down in a way that like a plastic won't. So the types of containers that your things come in make a really big difference. Can you choose a glass one over a plastic one? Can you choose a loose carrot at the grocery store instead of the bagged carrots? And it's really like, those are so simple. And if you just open your eyes to them, you will figure out that there is probably like 30 different items that you use on a weekly basis that you could purchase in a more environmentally friendly container.
Yeah. Interesting. I love it. That's a great, it's a great add-on to Molly's philosophy. Like it works very well in that way. And I'm not surprised that you share it as well. And it's great it's great. That's like the whole point of this show, is to just have these conversations be more like less doomsday, less like the world is so huge. How are we going to save it and climate, and and Molly said it too. It's like it's so easy to get overwhelmed and bogged down by that kind of thinking, that if you talk about, the small individual pieces that you can do. And I think it's also important to say, which like, it's both, right? It's like your personal actions and like the larger systems change that we want to see. But I think what happens is like, like, I know I do this. I'm like, I catch myself doing the like, oh, well, me doing this little thing like won't change a lot. I need to focus on like voting people into office, which is true, but like it's both. You know what I mean? It has to be both.
If people pretty much stopped buying plastic bottled soda, they would pretty much stop making plastic
exactly.
bottled soda. Right?
Yep.
So like people are so quick to dismiss how much we talk with our dollars, right?
Yes.
So if you stop buying chapstick in plastic containers, and I am like a chapstick or lip balm addict,
same.
to like No Tox Life makes cardboard compostable container.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah. So like, you know, things like that are the things that really add up, because also in many, many cases, particularly with these little tiny things, they're not, even if the container material is recyclable, they don't get recycled.
Right.
So it's just like there are so many places, right? The container that, like, are you using the Keurig plastic one, or are you the competitor's
like refiller
aluminum one, or the refillable one? Is your is your produce wrapped in plastic and styrofoam, or not wrapped at all? Is your everything, like, is your soap in a plastic bottle, or are you buying the glass bottle and the tablets that you can then, you know, make more soap? And the reality is when you look at a lot of these things over time, particularly the things like buying larger serving yogurts and cereals and things like that, it actually saves the consumer a whole bunch of money, because you're paying for all that extra packaging.
Yeah,
so like,
totally.
It works for everyone. You just have to open your eyes to it.
Right. Yeah, totally. I love it. Jess, thank you so much. This was really fun to live record our first meeting, you know, and like have this conversation that we were going to kind of catch up and me learn a little bit more about what you're doing. I'm like, let's record it. You said, let's record it. We did it. And it's great. I'm so excited to link out to Take2Trail and drive folks there, especially in the trail community. We do have, I skew very trail focused. So the listenership is a lot of trail people. So I think we'll have hopefully a good turnout, at least people checking out the site. I myself want to sell on the site now. I have a lot of things that I want to send your way. So thank you for joining. And seriously, thank you so much for what you're doing. It's very cool and very needed. So we appreciate you for that.
I very much appreciate you too. So thanks so much.